In 1848, the discovery of a tiny gold nugget led to an outbreak of gold fever. People from all over the world rushed to California. Thousands poured into San Francisco, causing a population explosion that changed the city and the state forever. John Sutter, a Swiss immigrant, arrived in California in 1839 when it was a territory of Mexico. He lied about his past, telling Mexican officials he was a former captain for King Charles X of France. They believed his story, made him a Mexican citizen, and granted him about 50,000 acres of land in the Sacramento Valley. With the help of European immigrants, Pacific Island laborers, and local Indians, Sutter developed the land, grew crops, and raised livestock. He built Sutter's Fort, a walled village with shops, a flour mill, a blanket factory, and living quarters. Sutter expected to make his fortune through farming and trade, but the true value of his land would soon be discovered. That discovery was made by James Marshall, a carpenter Sutter hired to build a sawmill about 45 miles east of the fort on the South Fork of the American River. On January 24, 1848, shiny and metallic in the river. He showed it to Sutter. They checked the encyclopedia, ran a series of tests, and determined that Marshall had found gold. They tried to keep it a secret, but word began to trickle downriver to San Francisco. News of the discovery spread across the country and around the world. By January 1849, the gold rush was on. Barbers, bankers, shopkeepers, farmers, and government officials left their jobs and their families to head for California. These gold prospectors were called 49ers after the year they arrived. And they arrived in the thousands, changing the face of California forever. 49ers followed three major routes to get to California: the overland route along the Oregon-California Trail, or the Santa Fe and Old Spanish trails further south. A sea route covering 18,000 nautical miles around the southern tip of South America at Cape Horn. And a sea route through the Isthmus of Panama, where travelers had to trek overland to the Pacific coast to pick up another ship bound for San Francisco. By land or by sea, the journey west was long, difficult, and often dangerous. The quickest way to go was through Panama, but it was also the most expensive. Tickets ranged from $300 to $1,000. That kind of cash bought eager miners more than just a seat on a steam-powered ship, or steamer. It also bought them a 47-mile hike through a jungle, swarming with mosquitoes that carried malaria and yellow fever, two deadly diseases. The safer, more affordable sea route went around Cape Horn. This trip took 4 to 8 months. Passengers usually survived it, but they had to cope with boredom, seasickness, bad food, and disease. And they often arrived too weak to mine for gold. By far, most migrants to California before and after the gold rush took the overland route, traveling by wagon train across raging rivers, deserts, and treacherous mountain passes. The Donner Party is a well-known example. The members of the Donner Party chose to travel overland because, like many pioneers, they already owned wagons and horses. They stocked the wagons with flour and salt pork for the long journey, but they weren't prepared for Mother Nature. In October 1846, while pausing in the Sierra Nevada mountains to recover their strength, they were trapped by an early snowstorm. A rescue team sent by John Sutter finally reached the stranded pioneers 4 months later in February. Only about half of the original 87 members of the Donner Party survived the journey. Despite the cost, thousands came to California. Pioneers came to set up farms, and 49ers came to strike it rich. San Francisco went from a quiet shanty town to a bustling port city almost overnight. The population boom made California eligible for statehood in 1850. According to the census that year, California boasted a population of nearly 100,000. By 1900, almost 1.5 million people called California home.